let me introduce, I'm sure you don't need an introduction, but I'm going to give you one anyway. Veronica Henry. Veronica's Sunday Times best-selling author of 20 novels. According to her official biography, she was a scriptwriter for some of our best-loved dramas, such as The Archers, Heartbeat and Holby City, before she turned to fiction, which presumably means that everything in The Archers is true.
Totally.
Yeah, I thought that was probably the case. Veronica lives in North Devon. Joins me in North Devon, in fact, because I'm just about in North Devon where I live as well, with her 3 sons, and from there she writes all of her books. So welcome to Crediton Literary Festival, Veronica Henry.
Thank you very much, and it's lovely to see you all on this not very nice day.
No. The weather has made me smile, I must admit, today, because your publicist sent me some questions that I could, if I wanted to, ask you.
Oh, right.
And the first question that they suggested that I ask you starts with, your books are the perfect sun-drenched escapist reads. And I looked out of the window and thought, that's probably ideal.
Yes,
it's
you want
really not the best of weather. But tell us why you write about what you do, and why you choose to set your books on the coast in that kind of environment.
Well, they're not all set on the coast, but the Beach Hut books, there's 4 of, this is the 4th in the series, and they were kind of conceived, if you like, 10 years ago. The first one came out in 2010, which is quite terrifying, really. I live by the sea, and I was on the beach, sitting outside a row of beach huts with my boys, who were frolicking in the waves or building sandcastles. And I sat there and I could see all the other people in all the beach huts around me, and it was like watching telly, really, because you know, I was eavesdropping on all these conversations and seeing all the dynamics of different families, and you know, there'd be a young couple who were in the early stages of a relationship, another family who you could see that the mother-in-law was getting on their nerves. Everything, all sort of human life was there, and it was sort of a bit like being in the middle of Coronation Street, really, with each beach hut had a different story. And I literally emailed my publisher that afternoon when I got back from the beach and said, how about a book set on the sea? And I kind of pitched it as The Street, which is a Jimmy McGovern show about different houses in a street and different stories in the street. I pitched it as The Street meets the Bowden catalogue. In case you don't know, the Bowden is a kind of girls, very kind of English beachwear kind of clothing catalogue. And she wrote back and went, right, stop what you're doing and write that now. So I did. And kind of 9 months later, almost, it was the quickest book I've ever written, because it just kind of came into my head almost fully formed, which doesn't happen very often, as any other writer will tell you. Usually it's sort of agonizing process, but something about it just worked, and because it was sort of interconnected short stories, it wasn't as structurally complicated, and it just kind of came out in a big dollop. And 9 months later, there I was with a book out, and it was very successful, and it just kind of it was easy to revisit, because it didn't have to be the same characters. So in each book, you don't have to have read any of the other Beach Hut books to read one. So it's the same setting, but new characters every time. So I've done the Christmas one, of course. And then I think it was my editor's idea. I said something about weddings, and she said, oh, a wedding at the Beach Hut. And I went, yeah. So, yeah, that's what this one is, a wedding at the Beach Hut.
Indeed it is. And there, for anyone who has not seen it yet, is a nice new copy of Wedding at the Beach Hut, which has only just come out. So a lot of people here probably haven't had a chance to read it yet. I'm sure some probably already have. But for those that haven't, would you like to just summarise briefly what it's about?
Yeah, well, the idea behind it was I wanted a couple, so there's a young couple kind of at the heart of it, who just want a really simple wedding. They want a really chilled out wedding at the family beach hut with no complication and no drama and no, not a huge expense. Ha ha ha. As we know, there's no such thing as a simple wedding. The minute anybody else is involved, you get everybody else's ideas about how it should be and what should be happening. And I didn't want to write a book that was about all the minutiae of, what kind of cake are we going to have, because I feel like that's been done so many times. It's not about that. It's more about all the people around them kind of taking a step back from where they are in life. And there's something about a wedding that makes you think about where you are in your life, and whether you're happy with what you're doing, I think, quite often. So that's sort of, the people around her are all going, here's them stepping out into a bright new future, but I'm not happy with where I am. Maybe I should make a change. And also the bride-to-be is adopted, and she suddenly feels a really strong urge to get in touch with her birth mother, because as she's about to get married, she feels as if she really, really does need to know who she is and where she's from, literally and metaphorically. So she embarks upon that search, but she keeps it secret from everyone. And of course, that no such thing as a secret either. So those are the two main thrusts of the story. So it's not about, should I have a white wedding dress and what kind of shoes should I be wearing? There's a tiny bit of that, but that's not that's not what it's about. It's about emotions. Yeah. Really.
So when you come up with an initial concept so you talk to your publisher, or your publisher talks to you and goes, oh yeah, wedding in a beach hut, that'd be really good. How do you then go about plotting from that initial kind of, let's set it at a beach hut and there be a wedding, to having that kind of, it's not just about a wedding at a beach hut plot?
Well, I have to start with the central characters and work out the time frame of it. So one of the characters or one of the relationships has to set the time scale. Obviously with this it's quite easy because there's a wedding at the end, so I knew that's what I was heading towards. But really you have to work out the main plot and how that that's the skeleton, if you like, of your book, and all the subplots have to weave in around that and match that main motor. Terry, who's here somewhere, I've learned this from television. So you've got your main plot that's driving it, the A story, and then all of the other stories have to sort of snake in around that, and then you have to work out what your main turning points are, and then the subplots have to kind of reflect that, or make it more dramatic, or so you're cutting from a dramatic point in the A story, and then whatever you're going to in one of the other subplots has to fit up against that nicely and not be too jarring a jolt. So it's quite complicated, and with my first draft's usually quite rough, because I didn't have a lot of time with this one for various reasons, and I'd quite like to bring my editor on board at quite an early stage, so I hand in what I would call a glorified storyline. I mean, oh God, go away, hang on, sorry, FaceTime, that's my mother, clearly not reading my email of earlier saying I'm on the internet. Where was I? Yes, I wanted to bring my editor in quite early on, and I also, when I delivered my first draft, I realised that one of my subplots this time wasn't right. I knew exactly what my editor was going to say, and I knew that the subplot was going to be a problem, and so I cut 40,000 words, which, if you're a writer, will fill you with horror because that's a lot of words. I just knew in my gut that it wasn't right. It wasn't that the story was bad, it was just that it sort of overshadowed the main plot, and it made it not about who it should have been about. It was almost too strong a subplot to fit in. So yeah, so I deliver a kind of fairly rough first draft that would read book-like, but I know it's got massive holes and isn't beautiful and isn't polished in any way. So I cut that.
But those 40,000 words are never wasted, are they? Because they sometimes go on to become part of another book.
And it's always a learning process. I learned from that. I learned to be brave, actually, is what I learned. I learned to trust my gut. You always learn with every draft, I think, with every book. And no book's ever the same, and it never gets any easier. Anybody who's an aspiring writer, I'm sure you'll be reassured to hear, it doesn't get any easier, because you're always starting from scratch. You're always creating something completely new from scratch. So of course it's difficult.
Do you find it's a very different process writing for a novel from what you're script writing as you did before?
Yeah, it's a completely different process, for lots and lots of different reasons. With a With a script, you have lots and lots of restrictions. Terry will know, because Terry was my script editor on Doctors a long time ago. So you have lots of, you have cast restrictions, so you can only have so many characters in a television script. You have budgetary restrictions, so you can't just shove a car crash in, or a glitzy wedding, or a trip to Paris, because the budget's probably not there. You have a very, very strict time restriction with a script. It's an hour long or half an hour long, so that's very restrained. So all of those rules and all of those disciplines. But the thing about scripts is it's very collaborative. So, for example, you have a script editor who's holding your hand. You're picking up, if you're writing long-running series, which I was, you're picking up a story from the previous person. So you're kind of being fed a little bit of the story and what's got to happen. And you're also handing it on to the next person too. So you've got a bit more material to work with. You're not just in such a vacuum. So that's script. And it's very much a draft process and a fast process. And there's a lot of people on board to help you. There's a lot of teamwork. It's very collaborative. Books, it's like, right, you can write whatever you like in the whole world, in the whole universe, and you've got a year to do it, which is an entirely different, almost inhibiting in a way, because you have so much freedom and so few restrictions. I mean, what's my restriction? My restriction is, I write commercial women's fiction. So that's about the only rule I have to follow. I'm not going to suddenly start writing science fiction, but that's terrifying. You're just looking into a void. And yes, I do have an editor, but she doesn't really expect me to be phoning her every day saying, not sure about this scene, what do you think? So it's not collaborative at all until much, much, much later in the process. And that's quite lonely. I'm quite a people person, so I really do miss teamwork. And meetings, script meetings, and that kind of thing. Yeah. So yes, massive difference. Sorry, that's a very long explanation.
No. It's all very relevant stuff. And of course, meetings in this way are great, but they're not quite the same as just popping into your local.
No, and that is the one lovely thing about when a book comes out. You do get to get out. You've been alone all year, and then you suddenly get to go out and meet lots and lots of people. The other thing about the difference between scripts and books is, with a script, you have to be quite restrained with what you're writing. You're really handing over a template to a whole team of other people that are bringing that script to life. So you don't go into huge long descriptions about, say, the clothing or what a character looks like or the location that it's set in, because, say, with a house, it's up to the location manager to go and find the house that he thinks is right. So that's his creative input. So you can't just sit there and write, it's 3-story with wisteria draped over and a black front door, and you don't write all of that. And that's what I wanted to do. I love words, I love description, so that's what I wanted to indulge in, is the words rather than I think writing television is much more about the bare bones of the story and handing that over to a big team of other people.
Would you go back now though?
Sorry?
Yeah. Would you go back now to writing scripts again?
I wouldn't mind, because it would be interesting to see how I've changed as a writer, and television does take up, so if you're writing, say, for I don't know how long an episode of Doctors takes nowadays, but certainly with an episode of something like Holby City, Terry's holding up 3 weeks, 3 months. Yeah, something like Holby, that will take up 3 months probably from the first script meeting to the final draft. And it's the sort of thing, I found it very difficult to flip between writing an episode of Holby. You're not writing all of that time, because there will be, you'll deliver it and then it'll sit with the editors for a couple of weeks before it comes back. But it is quite difficult to flip and do it. So I don't know how it would fit into my writing schedule, but never say never.
No. And if somebody wants to film one of your books, then you probably
I wouldn't have a problem with that. Although it's quite, I think with that, it's actually quite nice to have a fresh set of eyes on it in terms of writing. So I wouldn't necessarily want to write it. Co-write, perhaps.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Or script edit. Yeah, there's a couple of questions. Questions from the audience here. Karen asks whether you have a work in progress at the moment.
I'm quite lucky in that I'm at the beginning of my next book, so I'm in that lovely bit of sort of wafting around, thinking about it, thinking of the characters, giving them names, working out where they live. So I'm not under pressure at the moment, which I'm really grateful for, because the world's mad. So I'm quite glad. I've put the previous book to bed, done a lot of publicity, and now I'm kind of percolating, I think they call it. So yes, but I can't say what it's about yet because I haven't really worked it out yet. But
of course,
it's not a beat cut. I know that.
Jennifer asks, what key piece of advice you'd give to somebody writing their first novel?
Okay, I've been asked this quite a few times, and it's actually taken me quite a long time to work out what the really most truthful and honest and helpful answer is, and that is what you need more than anything is stamina. Anybody can have a good, not anybody, but it's all very well having a great idea. The first 30,000 words of a book are usually the easiest. The difficult bit is getting to the end, and that's the bit that you need to be able to do. That's the bit that you've got to push on through, and make sure that you've got enough material to do those. Say my books are about 90 to 100,000 words, so it's stamina. It's about working out how to get enough story to and write it and to get to the end, because nobody wants a book with a great beginning and nothing else. Everybody wants, and really what editors and publishers want is people who can do that again and again and again. So, and that's not the answer that people want to hear, I don't think necessarily. Because it's tough. It's really tough, and everybody finds it tough. All writers. I don't think I know any writer that just kind of goes, yeah, well, there we are. Think, I mean, maybe somebody like James Patterson, who has possibly other people helping him, I don't know, I believe, might be more.
I suspect the level of help is open to interpretation.
Yeah, I don't think that's a secret in any way. I think I've got the right person. I don't want to be seen.
Yeah, you have.
So yeah, it's always exhausting. It's always, and it's about, you've got to make yourself get to the end.
Excellent. Sarah asks, is there a beach in particular your books are based on? They make her think of Staunton Sands.
Oh well, yes, I can't see Staunton today, but I actually live in the next bay around, so it's sort of based on Woolacombe because that's where it was conceived. But it's kind of every beach that I love that I've ever been to, and of course the beach huts in my book are very elaborate. There's a lot of artistic license there. I know there are in places like Southwold. I think there are quite a lot of big rambling beach huts that you could almost live in. So that was the inspiration for those, because they're they're quite, if they needed to be big enough for people to be able to stay in and stay overnight and kind of resemble a house, because you want people to be able to come together and have meals together. It had to be like houses. So yeah, bit of artistic license. So it's a big old mishmash, and just whatever I want, I can have. That's the great thing about writing books. Just add, a big beautiful beach hut that hasn't ever been mentioned. Yes, of course, there's a massive pink one. Yeah.
A couple of questions here from other authors that are participating in today. So Tracy, who's doing a talk at 7 tonight, asks whether you're a plotter or a pantster, and if you're a plotter, how do you do it?
Oh, okay. So I'm a bit of both, if that's allowed. I do have a kind of skeleton, and again, I think it's from working in television that my brain has been sort of hardwired to, you can't write a TV script and not follow a fairly strict set of plotting rules. So I think I'm really lucky in that that's how my brain works. So I kind of know instinctively what my material has to do, and I have a rough outline, but sort of, I know what the ending will be, and I know what the big turning points are, and then I definitely work out how the other plots will fit in with that. But then there does come a point where I just want to start writing and then see what happens, because other things might come up I don't want to be ruled by that. So it's kind of like setting the sat nav. So you're going from Devon to Birmingham, you set your sat nav, but then you kind of get halfway there and think, oh, I think I might go. I think I might go to not Weston-super-Mare, because it's a COVID hotspot at the moment. Somewhere else nice on the route. Bath. You know, I think I'm going to go via Bath, and then something exciting might happen in Bath. But then you get back, eventually get back on the M5. So that's the best analogy I can give, really. And usually I still do go through Bristol and Gloucester and Cheltenham and Worcester to get to Birmingham, but other things might happen on the way. It's a little bit of both. But I think, as I said, I think my brain's been trained, so I am really lucky. I kind of think, that's not going to work if you don't stop at Gloucester for some petrol. You won't get there. So I hope that makes sense.
Okay, we've got 10 minutes to go on this session. This question is from Debbie. Debbie was one of the authors on the crime panel this morning.
Hello, Debbie.
Debbie asks, are you ever tempted to write a series of novels so that you're not having to start from scratch each time, creating characters, settings, etc.? Must be a big difference from writing for TV or radio, such as The Archers, where characters and settings are really well established and well known by everybody.
I mean, that is the beauty of those. But then actually, in some ways, it's hard. I do have 3 books that follow on from each other, the Honeycoat books, which are based around a family brewery. And you kind of think, oh, well, I know the characters and I know the setup, but actually, certainly, you've done quite a lot with them. So then you have the challenge of doing something fresh and new when you've already made them have an illicit affair with their next door neighbour or have a moral dilemma of some sort. So in some ways, it's more difficult when you've got established characters that you've already done things with. And the beauty of a new set of characters is nobody knows what they've done, nobody knows anything about them, so you can throw them into the mix. But it is lovely to go back to familiar territory and those dynamics that are familiar. Do you know what? There's never any easy way. There's no shortcuts to making writing easy, ever. I think that's the truth. But yeah, it's quite nice to, and sometimes I'll go back to a similar setting and some of the characters will cross over, or some of the characters from a previous book will kind of have cameo appearances or something, which is that's a little treat for the reader, or the loyal reader, who says, oh, I remember them, they're from, so.
Of course, the problem for Debbie as a crime author is that eventually, as her series goes on, she kills all the characters and there's nobody left, and then she just has to start a new series, I suppose.
Don't get too fond of any of them, they've all got to die. Yeah.
Question from Karen. There's lots of questions, which is great, because I was going to go with the questions that your publishers sent and said these might be interesting.
But it's
everyone
great.
else has got loads, so let's stick with these. Karen asks, do friends and family ever ask if you have based a character on them?
Yeah, sometimes. I'd really try hard not to do that, because it's just not fair. People will always take it the wrong way, or I did have a friend once who's like, that's me. It was this character who always got horribly drunk at dinner parties, and then her husband had to send everybody flowers the next day because she behaved so badly, and this girl was convinced it was her, until I pointed out that I'd written the book before I'd met her. Sometimes people see themselves even though it's not them, so I try not to, unless it's kind of like an in-joke and a bit of fun. But dangerous territory. Lawsuits are go-go.
It really can be, can't it? Yeah, depending on what genre you're writing into.
Yeah.
Jane asks, Jane says she's really enjoying seeing plays, films and author talks and things online without having to travel anywhere. I agree, Jane, it's been really nice.
Yeah, there's been some amazing.
There really has. But she says, how are you finding promotion at the moment?
Gosh, it's actually quite, touring with a book, God, that makes me sound like Take That or something. It is really tiring, especially when I live in North Devon, so anywhere it's an hour before my journey's even started. I have to get to junction 27 and then the journey begins. And I know that the schedule that I had lined up for me for this book was involved quite a lot of travel, so I was sort of semi-relieved, not because it's really tiring. just do, and I always drive because it's always 10 times more effort to get the train, really, because you'd have to stick to times, and so it's been quite luxurious doing something like this. It's been, although Crediton would have been a pleasure and easy to get to, but it's been rather fun and different, and in a way it feels more intimate because you can actually see everybody and you know what their names are, and so from that point of view it's been good, and I really hope that in the future we can do a mix of this. I think it would be wonderful to see people in real life again and kind of have that human touch. But I also think this will open up loads of opportunities, and that smaller libraries will be able to attract writers who otherwise would have gone, darling, I need to stay at the Grand Hotel if I'm coming to you. So as writers we can do this for, well, hopefully free of charge, really, which just
I think it really has opened up.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it really has opened up a lot of opportunities that I think will carry on going forward. And certainly, I think lots of people are saying how much they're enjoying being able to participate in things that they might not be able to physically get to for various reasons. So I think as a writer as well, it would open similar opportunities for you as well as for your audience, perhaps.
I think so. And getting people together as well. Otherwise, it's really hard to do a panel, obviously, Debbie, I guess did you do a panel earlier? It's much easier to get 3 or 4 writers together on Zoom than it is in real life, A, budget wise, and B, just logistically. It's much more doable, and you can be much more spontaneous as well, perhaps. Yeah. Which is more, that I think it's really exciting. But I am looking forward to my first proper real interaction with human beings and a glass of wine.
Yeah, I think everybody's probably in the same position, aren't they?
Yeah.
We've got 3 or 4 minutes left. Let's just throw a couple of quick things out. Your books are very much about escapism.
Yes.
In other ways, but what do you escape to? What do you read when you're not writing?
Lots and lots of different things. A few classics. I've been reading the Cazalet Chronicles by Elizabeth Jane Howard because there's about 5 of them, I think, and it's the kind of writing I aspire to, but it's very much, and it's sort of that comforting reassurance of family and home, which is very much a theme of what I write, but just amazingly written, because Elizabeth Jane Howard is a goddess as far as I'm concerned, and so skilled. And she breaks all the rules. There are no rules in writing. That's another thing I would say. And I was reading the first one, and there was a sentence that was 3 pages long. I mean, it had a few semicolons in it, breaking it up, but she just did this amazing summing up of where everybody was in life, and it was a 3-page sentence virtually. And I know for a fact that anybody on teaching a writing course would have gone, you can't do that. Well, you can. You absolutely can. You can do what you like. She breaks all the rules, but it all works. And that's what I read for, is to be able to enjoy that kind of it's proper old school real writing that hasn't been formalized. There's so much. I think Hollywood has a lot to answer for in writing at the moment. Everybody's got to grab everybody by who cuts the chase on the first page. You know what? No, you haven't. Set the scene. Let us wallow around in it. Let us enjoy the words. Let us enjoy the imagery. Let us get to know everybody a bit. We don't have to have a car chase or a bomb or a kidnap or a whatever on the first page. We don't. I don't even know if that answered the question.
Yeah, what do you read for escapism?
Yes.
Jane Howard, is it all?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of why I read and what I look for and what I read. Yes, I've just read a really lovely book called Writers and Lovers and Writers by a writer called Lily King, an American writer, and it's about a writer. And sometimes books about writers are really annoying, but actually this is lovely. It's about a girl who's writing a novel and sort of negotiating a love affair with her love life with 2 men. It's lovely. It's just beautifully written.
Excellent. Brilliant. We have about a minute. We have about a minute to go, so I have to just wrap up at this point. I would just remind people, if you want to grab a copy of A Wedding at the Beach Hut, because it is so new, and why would you not want to?
And there it's also number 9 in the Sunday Times charts, I've just heard.
Excellent. Even more reason to get it. There's a link in the chat you can follow to grab that. There's a link in the chat you can follow if you want to donate to the library for putting these sorts of events on. Otherwise, please show your appreciation in a quiet and muted microphone way for Veronica Henry.
Really lovely to see you all. Sally and Terry and Jane. Oh.